the American people are ready for something new, and they want to change.
People have always used decades as a way of framing the past. If we think back to the swinging 60s and the 80s, even these words evoke strong images of cultural events, of fashion icons, of music, technology that define these periods. So, as we stand at the start of a new decade, it's only natural to ask and to think about what will be the defining cultural and disruptive forces that will shape the coming 10 years. How do you think we're going to remember the 20s? Well, some people might say that predicting the future is a fool's game, and certainly the last few days and weeks have shown that to be true. Bill Gates famously once said that we always overestimate the change that will occur in the next 2 years, but underestimate the change that will occur in the next 10. And that's particularly relevant for technological change, which often undergoes these exponential growth curves with change that can start unnoticed and then suddenly hit an inflection point where we see explosive growth that comes out of nowhere to disrupt entire markets. So what we need to do is to look for areas of firm ground to base our insights on. And often these can come from cultural trends or technology platform shifts that can spark innovation and enable entirely new ways of working. Right now though, it feels like those areas of firm grounds are pretty hard to find. We're currently in the early stages of a global pandemic that's disrupting all of our lives in ways that we couldn't have imagined even just a few days ago. Our Prime Minister declared this the worst public health crisis for a generation, and governments across Europe, in the UK and across the world are implementing measures that we haven't seen yet in peacetime. Countries are shutting businesses, they're closing down their borders, they're chasing people off the streets. We've got drones patrolling streets in some areas, all in a race to contain the growing threat of the coronavirus. We're all of us in this together. We're still trying to get to grips with this situation which is unfolding on an hourly basis. Here at Sabio, we implemented home working last week to ensure the safety of our colleagues and their families, and I'm sure that all of you listening are taking similar measures. Particularly that's a challenge with larger contact centres, but we all are here to look after our people and to try and minimise disruption. So please everybody stay safe, stay healthy, and let's try and get through this period together with as minimal disruption as we possibly can. When I first started thinking about how to address the opening of this conference, the climate crisis felt like the biggest threat of our time, and it just shows you how quickly things can change. We started this year with catastrophic scenes from Australia as bushfires swept across towards the southern coast, more than 10 million hectares of land destroyed by fires and pushing countless species towards extinction. Prior to that, Australia had its 6th hottest days in December 2019. And here in Europe, we've just had the warmest winter since records began. Back here in the UK, we've just had our wettest February on record with floods covering many parts of the country. And unfortunately, we're likely to see things get a lot worse as this decade progresses. And what that means is that the climate crisis will influence nearly every single decision that we make, from what we eat, to what we wear, to where we travel, to how we travel, to who we buy from, to who we work for. Every decision we make will be influenced by the corresponding impact that it will have on the climate. And we need to think on multiple levels about how we address this challenge. There are other disruptive forces at work as well that are really changing the landscape across the world. Some people refer to this as the death of the high street, and certainly here in the UK, the retail sector has had its worst year for 16 years. And as I stand here and look out the window of our empty London office, the once busy streets are almost empty as well. And I really feel for the local businesses, the taxi firms, everyone that depends on the economy and people coming into work. We're seeing high street brands, once well-known high street brands, disappearing off the high street. So really troubling times for the retail sector, and it's really not going to have helped with the current situation. And in fact, many of the services that we used to go to the high street for no longer exist. We're seeing a mass dematerialisation of the things that we used to go to the shops for: music, photographs, games, tickets, movies, maps, newspapers, even phone calls. All of these things are being digitised. And actually that means that the cost to then produce and distribute these things moves to near zero. It's not just physical products as well. Services and processes are heading down this route. Certainly financial services is well on the way to becoming a fully digitised industry. And we're starting to see the likes of medicine going down that route as well. And often, when we go down this route, we find that the contact centre actually becomes a better way to service these types of inquiries. And we think this will become the human face for many organisations as this trend continues to develop. But we're also seeing the digitisation of the physical world. If you think about it, almost every single electronic product that we buy these days comes with an array of sensors that are mostly internet connected. Even the physical infrastructure and the transportation networks are undergoing this trend. More and more sensors are being deployed in the economy. Today we have something in the region of about 20 billion connected things, with about 1 trillion sensors deployed out there. And as we get towards the end of this decade, that's forecast to grow to something like 500 billion connected devices with 100 trillion sensors deployed. Now, what this is doing is giving us much, much better information about what's going on in the world. And McKinsey estimate that this could generate an additional $6.2 trillion of economic activity by the middle of this decade. So this is a really interesting development to watch. But it's not just sensors, but entire computers that are getting cheaper and smaller all of the time. If I think about this Apple Watch that I'm wearing on my wrist as an example, it's more than 100 times more powerful than the original iPhone that was released back in 2007. If I think back to the start of the last decade, I used to carry my computer in a backpack on my back. And as that decade developed, I started carrying it around in my pocket. I now wear one on my wrist as well, and I put a couple in my ears when I get out and go to work every day. Computers are becoming smaller, they're becoming more ubiquitous all of the time, and it's very clear to me where this trend is heading. We will all very soon be looking at the world through a digital lens, whether that be through glasses or contact lenses. The foundations are being laid for a world where we have a digital overlay to the way that we look at the world. And this is profound in terms of our impact with computers and our access to information. Could this even herald the death of the screen? Who knows? But certainly I believe that the map, as we know it today, will become that lens through which we look to the world. So we need to make sure that our businesses are really well represented here. And we're already doing some great work with the Google messaging team, which we're going to talk a bit about later on in terms of embedding service directly into the Maps application. And as we see, that will become more relevant as time develops. Underpinning all of this is a rapid expansion of the world's global digital infrastructure. If we think about the growth of 4G, which really underpinned a lot of the developments that we saw, a lot of the incredible developments that we saw over the course of the last decade, it's helped supported the growth of cloud computing. Apps that we know and love like Uber, Instagram, mapping apps, shopping, the ability to digitize money. All of these things were underpinned by 4G, and these are about to get a whole lot faster with the 5th generation networks, which will continue to develop over the course of the 20s. And who knows what the implications of this are? We can't tell yet, but the platform is being created to support innovation at a much faster pace. Perhaps even more exciting over the next 5 years is that we are likely to see the next 4 billion people, the people that don't currently have internet access, currently being connected. And this is being driven by the likes of Google, Facebook, Starlink, which is an Elon Musk company, and lots of other organisations that are trying to connect all of those people that don't currently have internet access. And that's a hugely exciting and significant development. Think about what happens when all of these people start contributing to the global conversation. Think about what happens when we provide them with the tools to be able to innovate and trade with each other. Within that 4 billion people, there are 4 million people with genius level IQ. That's a really exciting development, and that's going to happen, by the end of this decade, and it'll happen over the next 5 to 6 years. Really exciting. And what's really crucial here is one of the key drivers behind this is the shift towards the cloud. And high-speed networks clearly are critical to this, but the cloud is democratizing technology and creating a platform for innovation in a way that we just haven't seen before. Provision of these incredible services in the compute power, which once cost millions and millions of pounds, millions and millions of dollars, therefore were only available to the world's largest corporations, are now available to developers and small businesses throughout the world. It's really exciting and a real driver of innovation, and it would be amazing to see how this thing develops. These tools are being provided to the masses. The other thing that the cloud does as well is provide us with the ability to work anywhere, which clearly is very important in the current climate that we're in today. And what this means is that the cost to start a business is shrinking all of the time. It's amazing how quickly and how easy it is to start a business these days. If I look at my wife, she started a business back in 2016. And if I look at the tools that she has to run her business, it's incredible. She's got access to a global supply chain. She can transport goods all over the world. She has a world-class CRM system, a finance system. She can access her customers using social media and Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. She can take a picture of her receipts and have artificial intelligence translate that and automatically put it into a finance system. All of these services were once only available to large corporates, but they're now available to small businesses. And what this is doing is leading to an explosion of ideas. The number of new things being tried is increasing all of the time. And that's being supported by massive capital abundance that's out there in the world. There's no doubt that the next decade will see the transformation of every single industry, and most of these will leverage the democratized tools that the cloud provides to drive their businesses forward. And what's really interesting is if we look at unicorns, and for those of you that don't know, unicorn is a startup or a privately owned company that has a valuation of over $1 billion. And if we can look at this acceleration going back to 2011 through to current day, and you can see this rapid increase of the number of unicorns, billion-dollar companies that are being created. And that's just a great example of the amount of innovation and disruption that's happening in the market at the moment. Okay, really exciting times. More wealth will be created in the next decade than has been created over the entire of the last century. Really exciting times. So what we see two different types of innovation at play here. Firstly, we have what we call incremental innovation, which is the constant iteration and refinement of existing products and services. And then we have disruptive innovation. And often disruptive innovation happens when someone, a startup potentially or a developer, can identify a friction point that exists within an existing product or service, and then they can apply a new technology to that to disrupt it, to make it cheaper, to make it better. And disruptive innovation is happening all the time. We're seeing an incredible advance in disruptive innovations across all different sectors at the moment. If we look at this economic activity that's taken place over the last few hundred years, and we go back to the first industrial revolution when the steam engine was invented, we saw a huge wave of economic activity that benefited all of society and continued to play out over the course of the next few decades. And then as we got to the early part of the 20th century, we saw the electrification taking place and the ability to produce things en masse, and people refer to that as the second industrial revolution. And then as we got to the 1960s, we saw the computer age, which obviously we're still living through now. People refer to that as the third industrial revolution. Again, another huge wave of economic activity took place over that period. But if we look at this wave of economic activity that's building now, it's absolutely unprecedented. The amount of activity that's going into all these kinds of different disruptive innovations, things like blockchain and genetic sequencing, it's huge. And this wave is likely to play out over the course of the next few decades. So it's an incredible time really to be alive and to be part of this innovation wave. Now, what I'm going to focus on today is artificial intelligence, because I think that's likely to be the most disruptive force within the customer experience sector over the next few years. Now, ever since the 1950s, we've dreamed about machines with human levels of intelligence, even going back to the days of Alan Turing, who would have been 108 this year. He first thought about intelligent machines. And ever since then, AI has gone through a number of boom and bust cycles. And there's no doubt that we're in a boom cycle right now. The current boom cycle has been driven by a huge advance in the computing power and the ability of deep neural networks and machine learning and the GPUs that support them. It's incredible the pace of development that we're seeing here. You know, we thought that Moore's law was quick, and Moore's law, you know, stipulated that computing power would double every 2 years, and that we've been living through that since the 1950s and 1960s. But what we're seeing at the moment is the amount of computing power that's there to power artificial intelligence is actually doubling about every 3.5 months. It's incredible the pace of development that we're seeing at the moment. But what that's done is driven some really inflated expectations around what's actually possible. We've seen a number of claims from the likes of Gartner, for example, that said that by 2020, we're more likely to be having a conversation with a virtual assistant than we are with our spouses at home. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I'm certainly speaking to my wife quite a bit more than I'm speaking to a computer, and I hope that continues, to carry on in the near future. We've also seen some pretty outlandish claims from the self-driving car manufacturers and even Elon Musk, stating that we are very close to having self-driving vehicles. Lyft here, for example, stating that, most rides in their self-driving vehicle, most drives by 2021 will be in self-driving cars. I personally think we're still a number of years away from that happening at the moment. So there's no doubt, if you think about the classic Gartner hype curve, we are definitely, at or slightly past that point of inflated expectations. We're certainly not in the trough of disillusionment yet. But artificial intelligence has undergone that huge wave of excitement. I think we now need to be realistic about what we can do with this technology. So the bulk of artificial intelligence today is centered around deep learning, and deep learning really is a triumph of pattern recognition. It's incredibly effective for making highly accurate statistical approximations, but that doesn't mean that there's real intelligence that lies behind this behavior. Speech recognition and object recognition aren't real intelligence, they're just slices of intelligence. And if you think about reading a book or watching a film or having a conversation, maybe even listening to me here today, you're constantly making inferences to a deep background of understanding of the world, of situations, of past experiences. And what we do is we apply reasoning and we apply language understanding and analogy to every single one of those situations. None of that's particularly well handled by current technology, because the central challenge that we have with AI today is that it's narrow. It works very well for particular tasks that it's programmed for, as long as what it encounters isn't too far different from what it's encountered before, which is actually great for most customer experience deployments. It's fine for conversations, not so good for self-driving cars, where the risk of failure is clearly that much higher. But what we have seen is massive advancements in the ability for machines to understand what people are saying, and speech recognition in particular. And we can harness this technology to great effect within the domain of customer experience. And these incredible improvements have been driven by the likes of Google, who are leveraging the amount of compute power, the amount of machine learning capabilities that they have to really democratize this technology, to drive down the cost in ways that simply weren't possible before. To deploy this technology would have cost millions and millions of pounds and dollars just a few years ago. We're now able to deploy this at fractions of a pence per call, and we're going to be talking about this later on today. What's also interesting is not just speech recognition, but speech synthesis. We're now able to apply these deep neural networks to the ability to synthesize speech as well. I'm going to play you a quick video now, and we'll talk a bit about this afterwards.
Just like we practiced. Ready?
I'm always ready.
Showtime.
Today in Los Angeles, it's 85 degrees. Say my name. Woohoo! Oh, aren't we organized? I'm not reminding you of
Alexa, ask Samuel L. Jackson for the weather.
It's cloudy with a chance of me. Ha!
Alexa, ask Sam to play rock, paper, scissors.
Okay, let's do this. 3, 2, 1, paper! Booyah!
Alexa, tell Sam Jackson I love you.
That's so nice of you to say. I love me too.
Not bad for a rookie.
Say rookie again. I dare you.
I love that video, and I can't wait to get Samuel L. Jackson and probably a bunch of other celebrities on my Alexa at home as well. And by the way, yes, you can have it with swearing or without swearing if you've got kids at home. So But what's really interesting about this is that they've got Samuel L. Jackson in the studio, and they've got him to record a bunch of prompts, and they've taken that data and they're able to then to use that voice to play back pretty much any prompt that they want. So what we're now seeing is that brands are starting to develop their own custom voices. And we're very close to this happening now, where we can actually start to develop custom voices that we can program pretty much to say anything that we want. So we need to start thinking about how we represent our brands. What are the personalities? What are the style of, the way that we build up these personas for brands? And how can we leverage that, not just in marketing activities, but maybe even the conversations that we have with people in contact centres? It's also important to consider the appropriateness of voice as a channel. And I'm going to use a quick example here using Alexa and Siri to demonstrate that voice is a fantastic and very efficient way of inputting data, but it's quite a linear way of getting information back. So let's say if I ask Alexa, what's the weather today?
In London, it's 19 degrees Celsius with mostly cloudy skies. Today, you can expect intermittent clouds, with a high of 20 degrees and a low of 10 degrees.
So you'll notice that I asked the weather, and it took Alexa probably about 20 seconds or so to play me back that information. Now, I'm going to do the same for Siri. Say, hey Siri, what's the weather like in London today?
Okay, here's the weather for today.
So you'll notice that by playing that information on a visual screen, instead of playing it back via voice, we were able to get a lot of information over in a very, very short space of time. Okay, so it's a really important thing to think about when we build AI-based solutions, but it's also important to think about how that translates to the conversations that your agents are having with customers in contact centres. Voice is a very linear channel. It's very hard to convey complex information, complex ideas about products and services. Imagine what would happen if we could give your contact centre agents a screen to push information out to customers at the same time as they're talking. We would give them superpowers. We'd really supercharge that experience. It's important to understand that we speak faster than we type, but we read faster than we listen. And I think we can think about those ideas both in terms of how we apply them to AI, but also how we apply them to the human experiences that our agents have in contact centres. So what's also really important is to get the best out of the technology. We need to treat it not just as a science. All of the work that Google are doing and the great science that they're applying to this is important, but we need to think about applying the artisan side to this as well. We're really lucky to have a number of artists and designers here in Sabio that help us really deploy this technology, but it's important to understand the art of conversation. It's important to know how we can leverage this technology, build conversations for customers, and ask the right questions to get the right responses back, ultimately to design experiences that really work and have the desired effect. So the art side of it is equally important as the science side of it. So we've talked a bit about disruptive innovation, and there's no doubt that AI will continue to provide tremendous opportunities, but also disrupt many, many industries, including the customer service sector. But it's also important that we think about incremental innovation as well. So incremental innovation occurs as we take an existing product or service and we continue to refine it to make it better. If we think about the car's a great example of this, right? The car, when it first came along, was an incredibly disruptive technology. But over time, we've gradually refined the car to get better and better. The Volkswagen Golf's a great example of this. It came out in 1974. But every 5 years or so, Volkswagen have released a new version of that car that's better, it's more refined, it's more comfortable, it's more economical, it's faster and it's safer and it's quieter. Every year, every 5 years, incremental improvements to make that product better and better. And we see that pace of change moving even faster when we look at consumer electronic goods. And again, the iPhone's a really good example here. Every year a new iPhone comes out. Okay, and every year that iPhone has a better screen, it has a better camera, the battery lasts a bit longer, it's faster, it's higher speed, it's got a bunch of better sensors in it. So consumer electronics moves much, much quicker. Certainly every year we see new products released. And then when we look at digital experiences and products, the pace of acceleration moves even faster still. Amazon's a great example with their website. It could apply to any website or any development to a software solution, where we see iterations of products being released maybe on a daily, sometimes even an hourly basis. And it gives us the ability to test these products and A/B test and understand which solution works, which solution doesn't. So the pace of digital moves much, much faster. But if we look at the contact center, we haven't really seen a huge amount of innovation, certainly in terms of the technology, over the last couple of decades, really. Maybe the screens are a bit thinner, as we can see in this picture. But we really need to start thinking about the contact centre in terms of a digital experience and start applying innovative and iterative innovation to the contact centre. And that covers everything from the way that the agents and the desktop interface with experience. We need to think about ways in which we can orchestrate the experiences that customers go through. Certainly, we can think about the way that we deploy artificial intelligence. We can start small and build it up from there, whether it be on the voice channel, whether it be on messaging channels. We need to apply iterative innovation to understand what's happening online and where's customer demand failing, and how can we measure what leaks into the contact centre. We can start experimenting with reaching out to customers using messaging channels, and we're going to talk to Google a bit more about that later on. And finally, we can think about actually reaching right the way up into the search, into the very first touch point for the customer journey, and think about how we can work with the likes of Google to engage customers right at that first call to action. So now is the time to apply digital thinking to the contact centre, to start thinking in a more agile way, to leverage new tools that can disrupt the CX market. We're now in a position to apply these practices much faster than we could do before. So in fact, as this decade continues to unfold, and as more products and services become dematerialised, and as AI continues to grow in its capabilities, the contact centre will become the human face for most organisations. And if you think about it, it's the place where most customer complaints are serviced, or most outliers are surfaced, or maybe the friction points that customers are experiencing in products or services are surfaced as well. And it's these insights that are key to driving differentiation and driving value. So we need to start rethinking the contact centre. Maybe it's not just a contact centre. Maybe we need to start thinking about it as an insight centre, as a strategic asset that we can harness to identify and create value. And that will enable us not just to survive, but to thrive in this massively disruptive decade. So at that point, I'd like to hand over to Forrester. So first of all, Forrester is recognised as perhaps the most foremost analyst in the world when it comes to customer experience. In 2011, Forrester made the bold call that we are entering a new age, which is the age of the customer, representing a transition in power from institutions and organisations towards customers. Since then, they have helped innumerable companies throughout the world to understand what customer obsession is, what it means for their businesses, and how to achieve it. It's therefore with great pleasure that we welcome Forrester Senior Analyst Karine Cardona-Schmidt to talk about the overlooked opportunity for CX differentiation. Karine, welcome to Disrupt 2020, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me, and hi everyone. I'm very happy that I can actually talk to you today. And when we talk about customer service, there's a lot going on in trends in technology and innovation, but there's one particular aspect to it that is really interesting for me, and that's the human aspect of it. And today my intent is to change your perspective on customer service, and particularly on human customer service, as I think it's the most overlooked opportunity for CX differentiation. And when you talk about customer service, and when I interviewed client costs is what I hear. And it's you can move to the next slide. Sorry, I'll have to give you some hints. And it's not surprising that with digital transformations, volume go up, not down. And obviously more volume coming your way means more resources to handle them. So in a very simple put way, more volume is a higher cost. And that's the message that I get over and over again about customer service. But there's a message I want you to take away from today's talk, to the next slide, is that you need to change your perspective. You need to change your perspective from that cost center to an opportunity center. Start looking at customer service in a different way. What do I mean by that? Next slide. Well, there's value right there. If you think about it, your agents talking every day to customers have a deep knowledge about them. They can give you insights into their needs, about their needs. They can inform you on priorities for your product roadmaps. They can also help sales. Um, when I look at the data that we collect year after year, we can see that the reasons why customers sometimes call are not just because they have a problem. They also call to get more information about a related product or service they do not own yet. But most importantly, in our digital world, the most valuable opportunity there is that human to human connection. That is the moment where you can demonstrate to your customers how well you understand them, how much you care about them. This is the moment where you can make a difference. I'm going to illustrate how it works and hopefully inspire you to make the case to revisit the role of your customer service agents and invite you to break down processes that do not serve that human connection. Let's see what happens when a customer service tries to reach out to a human agent. It very often looks like this, right? A maze, an obstacle course. Um, you're trying to reach someone, get an answer. Maybe you chat with a chatbot, doesn't escalate to a human if it cannot help you. You might find ways to send a request and get an email, but you cannot reply to it. And it's sometimes hard to find the phone number that you're looking for to reach somebody you want to talk to. If you look at this image, you probably recognize something you already went through, right? You can feel probably empathy for that customer. You might also feel something else. Maybe you feel a little bit powerless or ashamed because you suspect your company is doing this, pushing customers to a different channel, deflecting calls, hiding the service phone number. So when you do that, what happens when finally customers talk to agents? What happens to that opportunity? Well, it just got ruined. Next slide, please. It's ruined. It doesn't exist anymore. It has been ruined by frustration, by the effort that a customer had to put into that maze. And by the time customers reach that agent, the ones that were craving to talk to, they're overwhelmed by negative emotions. What about the agents? Well, your most skilled ones will probably not find fulfillment in a job that consists in talking to frustrated and angry customers all day. They might just seek another job. Next slide. And what I see as well, and I observe the worst aspect to it, is that the agent's value is ignored. Rarely CSRs are connected to product teams or even CX teams. They're rarely invited to participate in journey mapping activities or service design efforts. So instead of seizing the opportunities that this human to human interaction offers, companies are missing out. When we look at the data that we collect year after year, we know that customer service is a top driver for CX quality. That's what customers are telling us. Every year, we interviewed thousands of customers on their experience with brands. And year after year, we see over and over that customer service comes as a top driver of CX. And if we take a closer look, next slide, at what drives customer service quality, we see that the two main drivers are directly about the human delivering the service, the agent. But answering customer questions, empowering agents to be able to solve customer issues and do so in a timely manner does not look like much, but we know that companies still struggle with that based on the quantitative data that we're collecting. Now, I wanted to give a little bit of color to that quantitative data. I wanted to explore the qualitative aspects of customer service, find out what makes it memorable, understand what it takes to make a difference. The great thing about wowed customers is that they share their stories on social media. I'm going to share with you one of those stories and what we learned from it. This is a story about Ian. He's at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris with his family. He's on his way back from holidays, and his phone falls in a very narrow space. He tries to retrieve it, doesn't manage. He asks for some help, and the customer service agent that tries to retrieve his phone also does not manage to get it. Time passes. It's time for Ian to get his plane, so he leaves his phone behind with his contact details. Now, let me pause here just for a moment. Imagine how Ian felt losing his phone. It's probably not just about a device, right? There's a lot of our personal lives on our phones, pictures, memories that might not all be saved somewhere else. Ian probably felt he would not retrieve them and that they were lost forever. But guess what? He received a personal email from Etienne, the customer service director, who told him he managed to get his phone back. And with the news, Etienne sent a picture of the tool he crafted to be able to retrieve it. Ian shared the pictures and the story to thank Etienne and his team on LinkedIn and got a lot of positive reactions and comments. So we made a deep dive on 1,000 comments to this post. We looked at them one by one to understand what aspect of this story people would consider the wow factor. And overall, we identified some themes. The first wow factor is the one that we called culture and mindset. It's the one with comments like these, mentioning customer centricity at its best, or leadership, empowering teams to establish a culture of service. The second one is what we call the process, that what it takes to solve the problem. Lots of comments about MacGyver and the magic of duct tape. The third one was the one where there was a lot of emotions shared, powerful comments like those, mentioning acts of kindness, things that are so good that they could make the world a better place, how refreshing it is when you experience people who really care. And there were particular aspect to those comments, and those were the ones that we called going the extra mile. They were mentioning things like going beyond the job needs to help others or going beyond customers' expectations. So to give you a little bit of a sense of proportions on those wow factors of good customer service, here's a representation of all the comments that we analyzed. And you can see that 90% were about culture and mindset, 21% about the process, that solving what it took to solve the problem, 60% were commenting about the human touch with that special aspect to it that is going the extra mile. 60%. Now, is this something actionable for real business? You might ask me. Can you actually deliver human touch, go the extra mile? Can you escalate that without extra costs? Obviously, Ian's story is very unusual resolution. But actually, in fact, some companies are already cultivating that human to human opportunity. I'm going to give you two examples. The first one comes from Jumbo supermarkets. They found a way to demonstrate a human touch with their kletskasse in Dutch. You could translate that into chatty checkout. And the chatty checkout is actually dedicated to the customers who, like elderly people, appreciate to take their time. They appreciate to have a quick chat with the person processing their payment. So if you want to take your time and have a nice chat, you can take that kletskasse. The second aspect, the second example about that human touch with the extra mile, a good example for that is what DBS is doing with these lost cards process. It's a great example. The first question the agent asks when a customer's phone to say that he lost his cards is not what is your client number, it's not what's your name, it's are you safe? The agent recognizes first a potential emotional distress. Maybe you're calling because your card got stolen, you got mugged. You also recognize that maybe you're likely to have lost more than just a credit card, maybe a wallet, a purse, including your ID, maybe driver's license, or other bank cards. Only then the agent will take the customer through the steps of the new card process. But it will not stop there. It will go that extra step and closing the conversation, offering a list of useful numbers to the customers, including other bank numbers that might be competitors, to help the customer retrieve the next bank pass or ID or driver's license, whatever he also lost in the process. So how can you seize the human customer service opportunity? It's not so hard, and I'm going to give you 3 things you can immediately do. The first one is to mine your CSR's knowledge, connect them to product teams, invite them to journey mapping activities or user research efforts. The second thing you can do immediately is to revisit your customer service journeys. Show to everyone the pain points your customers and your agents are going through. Clarify that maze, make it clear to everybody what is actually that customer service journey end to end. And then when you have that clarity, you can decide where to use technology and how to use it so it will provide value to both your customers and your agents, supporting, not disrupting that human-to-human connection. And finally, find ways to infuse kindness and humanity. Look into, for instance, your VOC programs. What are actually your customers telling you about what they appreciate from their interactions with you? Because the way you can deliver a better connection, a better some acts of kindness and going that extra step will probably depend and vary per industry. But your customers can tell you how you can do that. With this, I hope I convinced you to stop obsessing on volume and customer service in terms of costs, and inspired you to shift your perspective to seize the human customer service opportunity. I encourage you to do what is right for your customers, for your agents, and for your business. In other words, make room for human-to-human connection. Thank you for your attention today.
Thank you, Corinne. That was a really, really insightful talk, and I think something that we can all relate to about how we bring the human aspect and focus on the human aspect in customer experience. Thank you so much for that. So my name's Michael Andrews. I'm responsible for strategy here at Sabio. And before I introduce the next guest, I'd like to share some exciting developments at Sabio that we've experienced since our last event in 2019. So the first big news, which many of you will have heard already, is that in December we were delighted to make the appointment of Jonathan Gale, new CEO at Sabio. Jonathan brings a wealth of experience from the CX industry and running a product-related business, having guided New Voice Media from startup to successful global business during his tenure. Now, when we planned this event, we felt that it would be a great opportunity for Jonathan to meet you all and to share his vision of the future with you. Unfortunately, this isn't possible today because he's recovering from major shoulder surgery, and so we wish him a speedy recovery. However, he will host a web or physical event of his own very soon and give all of you the opportunity to hear from him. Since the last Disrupt event, Sabio has grown significantly. We are now 630 colleagues operating from 10 offices in 9 countries. And we are well on our way to achieving our goal of becoming the premier independent customer experience and contact center innovator, integrator, and thought leader throughout Europe. In pursuit of our strategy of bringing best-of-breed technologies to our clients, we have expanded our footprint with Avaya, winning 40 net new clients organically. We have moved more than 15,000 agents into our Sabio on-demand private hosted cloud environment. We've grown our capability with Verint through the acquisition of Coreware right at the start of 2019, adding some fantastic analytics and business transformation skills to our family. We've deepened our expertise in Genesis through the recent acquisition of Team Vision right at the start of this year. And over the next few weeks, we will announce a new and unique relationship with Twilio, enabling Sabio to provide the full range of CPaaS services, including Twilio Flex. But today, I have the great pleasure of introducing the newest member of our Sabio team, Tom Mullen from Develop. Yesterday, we were delighted to announce the acquisition of Develop, a software product and consultancy company whose team of consultants and developers are located across Europe. Tom and his team have been delivering some awesome, innovative conversational solutions to some of the world's greatest brands, including Marks & Spencer. Tom, welcome to Sabio and the Disrupted CX. Joining Tom is our very own Stu Dorman, and the two of them are going to talk a little bit more about this news and the Develop business. Guys, please take it away.
Thank you, Mike. Tom, welcome to Sabio. We've been working together for probably about a year or so now, I think. And first of all, I'm just delighted to have you and your team as part of the Sabio group. I've got a bit of a confession to make to start with, actually. We were over in San Francisco at the Twilio Signal conference last year, and I took the liberty of stealing this T-shirt from your stand at the time. And I've been wearing it a few times since. I was going to put it on today, but I couldn't get the microphone underneath. But, that was maybe anticipation of you guys joining us. So it's brilliant to have you here. Could you, first of all, tell us a bit about Develop and who you are, what you do?
Sure. I guess, first of all, really hugely excited to be here. And I think events like today are kind of one of the reasons as well to understand the thought leadership, the vision that Sabio really has for the industry and for its customers. And great merchandise, by the way. Keep hold of that. I suppose our story is a bit of a cliched kind of tech story. For a little over 5 years ago, I was moved down to London, having been involved in a not so successful business, again in the startup space, living in my friend's front room, sitting in my boxer shorts, coding until late in the night, and very much understood that the industry was evolving and the need for the services that had gained over the past 10 or so years were becoming very, very powerful. So we started doing some basic digital consultancy work. Effectively, anybody who wanted anything digital, app or website, we were happy to do it. Founded Develop in 2015, the September of, and after that spent the first few months really trying to find a focus, to find a message and a specialization that would differentiate ourselves from the numerous other small digital agencies in the sector at the time. We came across Twilio and identified that there was obviously a lot of growth happening and their need for systems integrators was becoming ever obvious. We managed to build some incredible relationships with the team there, one of whom is going to join us a little bit later, and started to work with them around building innovative solutions for the contact center space. Introduced to the Sabio team roughly a year ago, and we're very clear and obvious that we wanted to do something together and really go and tackle the European market. That was very much accelerated by Jonathan, who joined in December of last year, and we started to speak about what that might look like, what the collective strategy for us to take this market on might be. And it became extremely clear that we should really be doing this as close as possibly can together. And yes, very, very happy to become an official member of the Sabio team as of yesterday.
So brilliant. And so tell us a bit more about Develop in terms of the projects that you've delivered over the last few years.
Sure. So we are a digital product studio and consultancy business. We focus very, very heavily on automation within the contact center space. We've got deep specialization with the Twilio and Google platforms and the tools that they offer around there, particularly Flex and Google CCAI solutions. We've been extremely lucky to work with some of the world's best known brands, including Marks & Spencer's, British Airways, Google themselves. So really, really excited for what we can start to collectively do together.
And you mentioned Flex and CCAI there. Could you just tell us a little bit more about those products?
Sure. So Flex is obviously Twilio's contact center offering, which not only is really presenting a new way of thinking about the technology, so full public cloud hosted contact center, but also really enabling a vastly new process. So complete programmability, allowing customers to really build and sculpt experiences that they feel that their customer kind of agents need to be able to deliver the service that they want for their customers. CCAI is a collection of technologies provided by Google, now wrapped in a stateful layer that's really focusing around bringing automation to the contact center space in 3 key areas. So the first one is pre-agents, the virtual agent space, so building richer, better automated conversations to either get customers to resolution more quickly or to better prepare them for that agent conversation, so we can really make sure that when 2 humans do speak together, it's a lot of value created. The second part is focused around actually providing agents with the tools to be able to focus more time on the things that are valuable about that human-to-human interaction. So we don't want them going searching for information. We want them to be able to focus on solving problems. And the third one is really the analytics and insights that we can gain from that, and then help to incrementally improve the services for all of the parties.
Great, thanks, Tom. And if I look at both the Google and the Twilio websites, and I look at the flagship case study that both of those organisations are holding up, it's Marks and Spencer's, which obviously was a deployment that you and your team delivered. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. The M&S team came to us with a pretty large problem about 3 years ago now. They had an inherent issue with large volumes of calls getting routed to the wrong place, actually into physical stores, where the people in there were not able to service the needs of the customers. It could be for something as obvious as like a stock check or to buy a product. And to be able to actually handle those calls, they had around about 12 or 13 switchboards which were manually attended across the country, with around about 120 people actually routing those calls in a very, very manual and labour-intensive way. What they wanted to do is free up that time of those people to be able to spend it on the shop floor, actually in front of customers, adding value to them. And they believed that they could do this with natural language processing and both Twilio and Google solutions, with programmable voice and Google's Dialogflow. Now, we spent 9 months actually migrating all of the M&S store traffic and all of the contact center traffic over to Twilio, and really enhance the customer journey through NLP, so natural language processing, using Dialogflow. And as a net result of that project, we were able to redistribute all of the people who are working in those switchboards and have them focused on customers in store. And all of the routing was then done at a higher level, so making sure that the calls that needed to go to store and the right people were sent there, and those that needed to go to the contact center were delivered there as well. So it's a really, really tangible benefit for the business in terms of a cost saving and a redistribution of those skill sets to be much, much more customer centric.
And in doing so, you've built an abstracted layer, if you like, that sits above both the Twilio and the CCAI platforms, and you've created a product called Airline about it. Could you tell us a bit about Airline?
That's right. So we've been working very, very closely with the Twilio team, particularly Tony and his team, and the CCAI guys over at Google, to build a deep integration between those two platforms. So actually bringing kind of industry-leading AI and technology into one of the foremost and exciting contact center platforms. And what this means is, as businesses, you can consume these technologies and really start to focus above the value line. So building things that are specific to your business and your customers as soon as is possible, whilst also really leveraging this incredible technology, which I believe is going to change what the contact center looks like over the next 3 to 5 years.
And how is the approach that Google in particular and Twilio are taking, how is that different to perhaps the way that we would have delivered speech recognition projects in the past?
I think the technology itself, and to your point earlier around the reduction in cost, is a huge factor. So historically, to be able to deliver a project like that would have required a huge capital expenditure to get to day one. And because of that capital expenditure, the emphasis on success for day one was extremely high. So you'd have to invest a lot of people hours as well to do the research and theorize as to what solutions would be good for your customers. And you've only really got one opportunity to succeed. If you don't succeed after that initial large capital investment, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to go back to the business to get more funds to continue to iterate. And I think that iteration piece that you touched on before is really at the heart of it. So the technology is now based on consumption-based pricing and very easy. You can try it out day one. Allow us to really flip the model upside down. So instead of investing lots and lots of time before we find out the truth from customers, we can build very simplistic versions of solutions, get them in front of customers early, test, listen, and learn from those experiences. And from there, we can focus our time on things that we think add value to our customers. And that will continue to increase over time. So
we can start small, design around the customer, and continue to iterate based on actually what customers want.
That's right.
Yeah. And what does that mean for organisations that have already got maybe significant investments in the current breed of technologies out there?
I think, again, really, because of the flexibility of these tools and the ability to consume them how and when we want, really gives us much greater flexibility to design and strategize around how we want to migrate to what we're calling internally kind of as Generation 5 technologies. So rather than having to be faced with we have to change everything day one to show value, is we can actually identify areas where we're not delivering value and start to test new solutions there. And once we've started to prove out the value, we can increase the level of traffic or the exposure that we give our customers to those. And it really allows us a very nice and smooth process to be able to move from what is potentially a large monolith to a more distributed solution, and that might be fully cloud-based, that might be hybrid, private cloud-based, but the process is so important. I think we collectively are very, very focused on making sure our customers understand what that process can give them and how to maximize the value from the technology.
Thank you, Tom. We've got a couple of questions coming in from our audience at home as well. One question is, what do we think the biggest challenges today faced by, I guess, not just the CX industry, but the industry as a whole? Is it the technology or is it the culture?
I think invariably it's a mixture of the two things. So historically, we've been very physically and geographically constrained by technology and infrastructure. You know, even 10 years ago, to be able to get that volume of calls into a single physical location was extremely difficult. You needed lots of hardware, you needed very expensive software. It was a big challenge. The distribution and homogenization of public cloud is really changing that. And what that technology allows is a very, very dramatic shift in process. So I think the combination of those two things is really extremely powerful. And the point around culture is also extremely important because there is a bit of a shift in terms of how we approach these solutions. A lot of businesses will be used to either procuring technology in a way that's not really that relevant anymore. So now we're used to kind of consumption-based purchasing as opposed to capitalizing an investment in day one. And it does require a bit of a cultural shift. It requires people to understand that they want to go on that journey and that many parts of their organization are going to be affected, but we can take small steps to get there, and ultimately we can deliver value at every one of those steps as well, which I think is the most important part.
And do you think that organisations either need a certain type of culture or mindset, or maybe a ton of developers to take advantage of this, or does it set better with operational control? What are your thoughts on that?
I think definitely within the contact center space and more broadly globally in the technology space, there is a shift to an engineering and developer culture. But with that said, you don't have to start with a team of 100 engineers. You can work with other organizations to help you on that journey and to build that skill set internally. I think, again, one of the key messages is to really make sure that we're looking at this as a gradual journey that will build over time And that building isn't just the technology and the solution that gets presented to the customer, but also the competency and the knowledge in-house.
Yeah.
Like that transfer and upskilling of teams is really, really important, and making sure that organizations and the existing staff feel very comfortable with that as well.
Great. Thanks, Tom. I'm sure we're going to talk a lot more about this as we continue to bring our panellists in. And so I'd like to stay with us now as we introduce other members of our Disruptor panel who are joining us from satellite links from all over the world, actually. I think we're going to go to John first at Google. So John, thanks for joining us. You're manage the partnerships and development team around messaging, business communications, and you've enjoyed an entrepreneurial career spanning mobile, digital media, education, IT. You've lived in places all over the world: London, Mumbai, Hong Kong. I can see Hanoi, and you're now helping developers upgrade mobile experiences with verified, smart, assisted business interactions using the developer APIs and dialogue flow and business messaging and so on. So thank you very much for joining us, John. We've seen a huge amount of activity from Google in this space over the last year or so with CCAI and so on. Could you tell us a bit about Google's ambitions in this space?
Sure, and it's great to be here, Stuart. Thank you for inviting me. It's a great opportunity, and it's a real learning experience to be on my first webinar during this COVID-19 outbreak. So it's a real pleasure to be here and to participate. So coming on to your question, could you just repeat the question again?
Sorry, John. So the question was just around Google's obviously entering into the customer service space in a big way, both with CCAI and also with messaging. Could you just tell us a bit more about Google's ambitions within the customer service space in particular?
Sure. So as you know, we help users discover brands through search and maps all the time, and we actually drive billions of calls from users to businesses on an ongoing basis, and we see that there's tremendous friction in terms of what happens once the user gets connected to the call. We've seen research where 3% of users enjoy using an IVR. What that tells you is that 97% of people don't enjoy using an IVR. So clearly, if we're driving users to these experiences, it's important for us to look at how we can help improve that experience for the end users and the brands who are responding to those calls. CCAI is a great tool or set of tools that enable us to help improve that experience.
I'd love to meet the 3 people that enjoy using IVR, by the way, the 3% of people. That's interesting people. But so you've obviously got the CCAI tool set, and your focus is mainly around messaging. And could you tell us a bit about some of these next generation messaging tools that Google are providing at the moment?
Yes, absolutely. So some time ago, GSMA invited us to help out on RCS, Rich Communication Services, which is a protocol of the GSMA, which is standards-based across mobile operators all around the world. We looked at that and realized that it would enable users and brands to have much better interactions experiences on their messaging, native messaging application. So we've been working on that and investing on that for some time, and we're rolling out RCS with our partners and operators around the world, which enables brands to use features such as chips and carousels, give transactional experiences through messaging that enable users' interactions with those brands to be far richer than they were, say, 2 years ago. Furthermore, we've launched Google My Business applications, messaging within the Maps application. So we see restaurants now receiving messages from users who've discovered their restaurant on Maps and want to ask if there's a table available, or if they have vegan menus on their meals of options. So that's working really well, and we're encouraged by the take up of that and how users are responding to it. So we're now talking to partners like Sabio and the other ecosystem players, and trying to understand how that scales to larger businesses who tend to ingest their messages through contact centers and would like the ability to have interactions with users through those surfaces.
Thank you, John. And just to elaborate a bit more, you mentioned RCS and some of the features and functions that it offers, particularly carousels, I think you said, and chips. Could you explain a bit more about what they are?
Sure. So if a user is messaging with a brand, then chips appear as suggestions in the messaging flow and give users a very quick ability to choose certain options. So if you think of an IVR system, you press 1 for accounts, 2 for sales, 3 for servicing. Chips are those kind of suggestions, but as you said in your awesome introduction, Stuart, what was it that people read faster than they listen? So you see chips appear very, very fast, and you can interact very, very quickly through that. Carousels are, you might have a number of options that you're providing to a customer. Say different types of shoes of different colors. You will be able to scroll through those options and select the one that you want.
Yeah. So really it creates a much richer experience for somebody that's using a messaging tool to be able to interact with the brand, to select options, to push information and that kind of thing.
That's right. We're upgrading from 160 characters to full digital formats.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, you know, obviously we talked a bit about CCAI. Tom mentioned it earlier on as well. I presume that we can start to then use the automation capabilities that CCAI gives us to sit behind these messaging tools to allow us to create, you know, bot experiences for customers.
Yeah, essentially the technology behind it, such as Dialogflow, is able to take in voice, process it, understand it, and also read text in the same way. So the user's intents are the same, whether it's voice or messaging format. That enables partners like Sabio to develop capabilities that really treat voice and messaging as in an omni-channel kind of way, and perhaps helps achieve your vision of an insight center versus a contact center.
Yeah.
And you can then deploy virtual agents, which are available 24 hours by 7 and able to escalate to human beings when problems get a little bit more complex and a human being is needed to actually help. Or agent assist that is able to take the information, whether it's presented as voice or text from the user, and present it to the agents in the contact center so they can read it and respond.
Yeah, yeah. Could you just tell us a bit about secure messaging as well, and how you think that will benefit organizations?
Secure messaging.
Yeah.
For verified SMS.
Sorry, verified messaging, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we realized was when brands are sending messages to users, often they're unbranded if they're sent as SMS. Users maybe are not trusting them. They fear that there's a phishing attempt. We want to help you not be vulnerable to those kind of risks. So through verified messaging, the brand is able to have their messages appear as verified. So they're rendered different. There's a shield with a tick, and there's a branded experience. Users are able to see that, recognize that, and trust it. And if you apply this to SMS, RCS, or even voice calling, you'll see that users actually value that and will pick up the calls more.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what's the best way for an organisation to start experimenting with some of these messaging capabilities that you've just described?
Well, I think, Stuart, I'll throw that one back to you. And I'm thinking that the dancing you were doing at the beginning of this webinar,
yeah,
is that you're very approachable. Clearly, if businesses want to start to use this technology, then getting in touch with Sabio and potentially other partners that are listed on Google's website is a great starting point. Then I think Tom described some of the steps that were taken by some of his customers. So define your problem, scope out your goals. What is it that you're wanting to achieve with the technology? And experiment with Dialogflow with our partners. Experiment with virtual agents, assistants, and learn from the insights that the tools actually provide you. So importantly as well, on the messaging side of things, you're going from 160 characters to something far more expressive. So you're able to show your emotion of your brand through the media of rich messaging. And so redesigning your conversations so that they're able to express the emotion and read the emotions of your users is actually very important. But the first step, I'll come back to the first step, is to get in touch with partners like Sabio.
Great. Thanks, John. I mean, for me, it feels like messaging is a massively underexploited customer service channel at the moment. I think there's huge opportunities to do more with messaging to engage customers, and we're really excited about the partnership that we have with Google, the way that we're allowing customers to experiment with messaging, and I think it's going to be a big part of how we engage with customers as this decade develops. Thanks for your time, John, and if you're able to stay around, I'm sure there'll be some more questions coming through. So I'm now going to move to Adrian from Computer Centre, if that's okay. Adrian, thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, Stuart. Hi, all. Thanks very much for inviting me to talk a bit about what we're doing at Computer Centre.
Great. Just to start with, Adrian, Computer Centre's pretty much a household name, but could you just, for those of us that don't know about the business, tell us a bit about what Computer Centre do?
Well, what we do, Stuart, is very simple. We're a business-to-business organisation primarily. Historically, we're value-added reselling of technologies and professional services, consulting, and now managed services. Broadly split 50-50. So 50% of our business revenue is through product and 50% is through services, professional or managed. We have global reach, customers primarily headquartered in mainland Europe or more recently through an acquisition in the US. About 17,000 employees, and as we sort of focus in on experience, we've got about 3,000 service desk agents globally in 22 centres.
Well, that's a big team. And tell us a bit about your role, Adrian.
Yeah, so I'm responsible for the technology strategy for the technology we use to underpin the services, primarily in the managed service area, that we offer out to customers. So contact center being one, some of the event management tools, some of the automation tools, end user portals, and the likes, all that help to power the services that Computer Center delivers through to its customers and its respective end users.
Yeah. And you've sort of described a bit about the market that you operate in. I presume, as with any market, there are disruptive, forces that are out there, or organisations that are looking to change the business model. Could you tell us a bit about your market and how that's being disrupted at the moment?
Sure, and it varies. It varies by part of business, Stuart. To be fair, certainly there is an increase in pressure through the use of just technology, and it almost doesn't matter who has the technology. So the insight through analytics and some of the automation capabilities. There is a natural labour arbitrage challenge from providers offshore. That I think historically have been India, but it's now more broadly Asia. And also we're starting to see far more influences. Bearing in mind we're a business-to-business organisation, there's far more influences coming from the employees that work for the corporates we deal with, who have a way of working that they're comfortable with in their consumer life, that's driving pressure into the business environment.
Yeah.
So they want choice, and importantly, they want their choice.
Yeah.
As a managed service provider, that gives us a bit of a dilemma in terms of accommodating those choices, but not restricting others.
Yeah. And I see you've been very visible in the market promoting your use of artificial intelligence in particular, and adding that to your capabilities. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we've been doing quite a lot around insights and automation, whether that's all AI or not. I'll leave that for the people that want to define those terms more precisely. But perhaps picking up on the choice point, Stuart. And the previous guest talked about IVRs and people not necessarily loving IVRs. So we still have to provide IVRs because lots of our corporate users require them, and that's their choice for interaction. But we're moving that now to natural language driven IVRs as opposed to DTMF. We're adding more recently with the help of yourselves, Sabio, chatbot.
Yeah.
For which there's clearly a significant dependency on knowledge, and we're increasing our automation of the user journeys through the bot. As a result of some of the insights that we're getting. And again, partnered with yourselves, we're creating this, what we call a federated instant messaging platform. So that our customer end users can sit in their own instant messaging engine of choice, Skype or Teams or something else. But importantly for us, as a managed service provider of shared delivery, we still need to get all of the work back into a technology, a contact center technology that we're comfortable with, which today is Avaya. Translating each and every one of those is a bit of a challenge. So we're doing some extensive work with yourselves on that federated IM platform. That mean the end users, again, about choice, they can initiate an interaction, a contact interaction, which could be voice driven, but predominantly web chat. Or instant messaging through the engine to our agents who are using Avaya. So we're then taking insights out of the contact center platform, as well as the tens of millions of tickets that get logged in a variety of the service management type tools, to help drive choices on automation and how we want to offer that experience from our service desks through to the end users.
Right. So you've really built a conversational, an AI-based conversational user interface that sits, between your customers and engages with them and your service centres.
Yes, we have. We've not forgotten just basic voice, though.
Sure.
That's still important for quite a number of our end users.
Yeah.
But it picks up on the choice point, Stuart. So we've got end user portals for people that are comfortable in portals. We've got instant messaging or web chat, particularly helped by this federated instant messaging platform.
Yeah.
We've got traditional voice. We've got natural language driven voice interaction. And then behind the scenes, we're taking that and ticket data, intent and some of the other bits of data information that we capture to then drive, as I say, more automation, more insight, and a better experience.
Brilliant. And for those, I'm sure there are loads of people listening in that are really keen, that are exploring similar strategies and are keen to understand what you've learned from the various different approaches that you've taken. Is there anything you can share with people to say what worked, what didn't work?
Yeah, well, quite early on in our journey, we realised that by helping the end users, if you like, drive a better experience through choice, actually one of the significant learnings that we subsequently addressed was we massively complicated our service desk agents and the things that they had to do through the multiple channels that our end users were trying to interact with. So we spent about 12 months creating what we simply call our agent portal, which brings together those various contact channels, and then independently of the channel, whether it's DTMF voice-driven, just voice-driven, web chat-driven, instant messaging-driven, we're picking up information, data about the end user, the customer, the language, the location, and the nature of their problem. Yeah. And we're presenting the agent with information in the agent portal on the channel that is best to interact with that end user.
Right.
Therefore, we're taking some of the alt-tab, multiple clicks that the service desk people traditionally would have to do. We're simplifying that in this agent portal, which allows the service desk agents to concentrate on the end user and the problem to solve, as opposed to worrying about populating tickets, moving between various applications, which is a habit that our help desks centres and service desk centres have had historically.
Right. So usability and user-centered design for the agent experience sounds like a really big focus for you then.
As important to the continuity of people in the service desk, number one, and to further enhance the end user experience through the services that we offer to the end users, which importantly are also starting to expand out of our core business, which is IT service management, into other aspects of business application management for customers. Yeah. Because the experience is good and customers are starting to leverage the fact the experience is good and that we're now broadening our scope out of traditional IT service.
Yeah. Thanks, Adrian. I've had a question come through from our panel here, from our listeners, and the question is, what are the challenges of getting automation into the conversation at board level? Do you have any tips that you can share with anyone?
At board level, so at board level, no. There is enough momentum in the market, and organisations need to have an opportunity to differentiate no matter what customers they're in front of. part of the challenge, Stuart, certainly in the world of computer center and our customers, actually, is more about security and data passing between systems than it is getting the money to spend on automation. We're housed in Europe. We're governed by GDPR. We would love to do more automation directly into our customer environment to do simple user administration requests, fulfilling, adding somebody to a distribution list. These are typical IT things. But unless the customer's got an automation platform, it becomes a security and data protection challenge for us to be able to fully automate that end-to-end process. With automation that either lives in the cloud or lives inside the computer center parameters. Getting agreement from corporate security, corporate data policy people can be a challenge.
Right.
But no issue in our organization
Yeah.
getting automation on the agenda.
So it sounds as if security kind of puts the brakes a little bit on innovation, as you've just described it there. Do you see that changing going forward as the cloud, I guess, and these open frameworks are more widely adopted?
What I see at the moment is that the bar, if you like, of security compliance and data compliance is going up. Therefore, the adherence and the gates you have to get through in order to drive innovation, I would just encourage people to think about those more seriously at the start of your design and thought process, as opposed to perhaps more traditionally partway through.
Yeah.
They are all surmountable problems, but you have to understand their parameters.
Yeah.
And the market and the industry is driving that bar up.
Yeah.
And that's an ever moving bar.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Tom, is that something that you've encountered with the many projects that you've deployed, the security constraints getting in the way at all?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point in terms of it's definitely a moving target, but I think it's actually a very important one as well to make sure that we're very cognizant of people's personal information and that we do have the technologies and they are evolving to be able to provide the correct support around those and the correct kind of interfaces and processes that will allow us to handle customer information in a secure manner that is representative of the trust that they have given us. So yes, I do think that it is increasingly difficult, but I also think it's incredibly important that that is very much at the forefront. And I think you rightly point out, if you think about those things at the beginning, they're much, much easier to solve than if you're trying to solve them or retrofit them halfway through a process.
Thanks, Tom. Adrian, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time out today, and hopefully, there'll be some more questions coming through if we've got time as the panel continues. So, Tony, I'd like to turn to you now. Tony, you're joining us from Atlanta, I believe. It's early in the morning for you.
I'm in Atlanta today.
Great.
Yes, early in the morning.
Thanks for joining. So Tony, you've been in this contact center technology arena for over 22 years now. You've recently joined Twilio as the head of their contact center sales and go-to-market capability. But you've also been involved in the launch of numerous contact center offerings at both Aspect and Amazon as well. So you've huge amount of experience in this space. So thanks again for joining us. For those of our audience that don't know, can you just tell us a bit about Twilio?
Sure. So founded in 2008, Twilio is essentially a trusted cloud communications platform that enables companies like Lyft, like Marks & Spencer, 1-800-Flowers, and Allianz to essentially build, scale, and operate any communication experience via APIs. So today, Twilio is used by more than 7 million developers around the world, powering over 160,000 customer accounts in 100 countries. A lot of people don't know that Twilio today powers over 550,000 contact center agents around the globe. And we're about almost 3,000 Twilions today, based out of San Francisco, operating out of 24 offices in 14 countries, although most of us are probably home today.
Yeah. Yeah, likewise. Certainly, the vast majority of my colleagues are working at home as well. So, you know, you've been a massive sort of Silicon Valley success story, and you know, powering loads of businesses without many people actually knowing about it. And recently entered into the contact center market a few years back with Twilio Flex. Can you tell us a bit about Twilio Flex?
Yeah, certainly. But you know, a lot of people see Flex as kind of our first step into the contact center, when in reality, it was about 2010, 2011, shortly after Twilio was founded, that we realized we were a great fit for contact center. We had the likes of ING, for example, building their entire brand new customer care strategy on the Twilio APIs. What Twilio Flex is essentially is a programmable contact center platform to build these customer engagement applications, right? So rather than going off and building, for example, a brand new agent UI, building all of the reporting components that you would need in a contact center, we made those things that were hard easy for our customers, right? But allowing them the flexibility of programmability and constant inspection and building and iterating on your contact center experience, which, you know, our point of view is that you cannot throw static technology at what is really a dynamic problem.
Sure.
And our point of view, as Tom knows, is that through partners like Sabio and Develop, and obviously the ecosystem of developers, we believe that the best way to deliver an exceptional customer care experience is by empowering your developers to constantly build, inspect, and iterate on those experiences.
Yeah. So you talked about this whole dynamic environment, which I agree with. You know, contact centers are changing on an hourly and daily basis. So how does Twilio Flex and your approach differ to what we might see from some of the more, you know, widely deployed contact center technologies out there today?
Yeah, sure. So one of the key value propositions of Twilio Flex is really owning your own roadmap. It's, let's say today you want to start with SMS or chat-based channels. You wanted to introduce WhatsApp as an example, or you wanted to go ahead and add voice. You're not forced to start on any one channel or to consume all of them at one time. So you can really start to test and validate your use cases to ensure that you can really meet the needs of your customers. The other very important thing is we really want to empower developers to solve some of the challenges of businesses. And we don't want to box you or limit you by our own roadmap. So our point of view is that you should own your own roadmap. You should be able to develop new features and capabilities as your customers need. So tomorrow you need to add Line as a channel of engagement because you want to enter the Japanese market. You should be empowered to do that versus waiting 6 months or a year for a vendor to provide you that functionality. So it's really about liberating our customers from the legacy way of doing things and putting the power into the hands of the developers.
Yeah.
Because we believe that that's where true innovation exists, and that's where we start to see really, you know, powerful experiences using Google CCAI as an example. There's just so much to do in the area of customer care that you need a platform that really allows you to be nimble.
And does that mean that you think your platform's better suited to certain types of organisations? I mean, Tom mentioned earlier on, you know, we're seeing a big shift generally to towards more of an engineering focus for many organisations, and people, you know, that regardless of which sector they operate in, thinking of themselves as software companies. Does an organisation need to have, you know, a rich engineering capability to really take advantage of Twilio Flex?
No, absolutely not, actually. You don't just need to be a developer. So there's really two types of adopters we're seeing. One, it's the digital natives, the born in the cloud type of organizations like Airbnb, like EasyCater and Shopify that have that developer builder DNA. But then you have disruptors. And I'm not just talking about, you know, those up and coming newcomers into a certain vertical, but even companies that are looking to disrupt themselves. And some of these exist in, surprisingly, financial services. Take Southwest Airlines as an example. An airline, right? Airlines haven't traditionally been at the bleeding edge of technology, but it's really a mindset and a shift that is required.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, you need developers, or ideally at some point you're going to need developers. But if you've got an idea and you want to start to disrupt, you can leverage partners like Sabio to help you get on that journey,
Mm-hmm.
start to build and train those muscles, right? But we are a platform that does require development,
Yeah.
and our point of view is that whether you have those developers today or not, that shouldn't stop you from starting to leverage or use Twilio solutions. That's why we have partners like Sabio
Mm-hmm.
that can help you get on your way. And as you pivot from being a consumer of traditional contact center technologies to one that's to a profile of customer that owns their roadmap, right? You can count on Twilio and our partners to help you get through that way. It really is a crawl, walk, run sort of process.
Yeah. And you mentioned the desktop as well. It was interesting hearing Adrian talk about what Computer Center have done to really simplify the experience for agents so that they can focus on the customer and not having to work a whole bunch of complex, desktop applications. Obviously, the Twilio Flex desktop's a key part of your proposition. Just tell us a bit about the flexibility that you've got there.
Yeah, absolutely. So you take, for example, Lyft had their agents were managing, I think Adrian would relate with this, 11 different applications, tabbing from one application to another. Twilio Flex with the agent experience allowed them to really consolidate this all into one single UI.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people would say, well, how long is that going to take us? We've got X number of agents or thousands of agents. They went from 0 to 3,000 agents on Twilio Flex in just under 3.5 months,
mm-hmm.
with their own in-house development resources. Now, those of us who've been in the space for a long time know that a transition of that size can sometimes take 12 plus months
mm-hmm.
with other legacy vendors. We do believe the agent UI, the experience that we bring with Flex, is something that is differentiated. And we hear time and time again of improved agent productivity, reduction of cost, first call resolution rates going up, like what we can do, for example, with Google CCAI to empower the agent and provide a very different experience to the agent is really second to none. I mean, you think of the old days where calls would take 5 to 10 minutes. With CCAI, we can proactively push information to the agent
mm-hmm.
to inform them, to guide them, to provide them the next best action or the next best answer, right? So it really is a very different space than it was 22 years ago when I joined the contact center technology space. We're seeing a rate of innovation that is exciting for me, and I'm sure it's exciting for my friends at Google and some of our customers out there.
Absolutely.
And I would like to add one last thing.
Sure.
Karine talked about human customer service. I know a lot of people hate IVRs. My point of view is that those IVRs were built in the back room somewhere with very little input from customers. Customers like IVR when we build solutions that are designed for them.
Sure.
So that's really one of the challenges we've had with IVR. You've got these call flows and trees that are designed, but not necessarily with the customer in mind. And I think as we start to think about what are those experiences that our customers want, I think you'll see an increased uptake in IVR and kind of proactive self-service applications.
Thanks. I've got a question here actually, which relates very much to that from our audience at home, actually aimed at Karine. So, Karine, you spoke about human-to-human contact, which feels a bit like it goes against some of the stuff we've been talking around today around AI in particular and automation. In the same way that many of the offshore contact centres have come back to the UK, do you think we'll go full circle and have human-to-human set up, or what role do you see AI playing in this whole thing?
Well, I hope the message I said today was not that technology is bad and you should avoid using a threat. I think, and I can see how technology is now enabling you to do more and faster. Just think about replacing that famous IVR with just a speech recognition piece. What are you calling us today for? And just let the customer tell you and route its call to the right person. That's amazing that we can do that. The problem comes from pushing technology without thinking about its right role, the right moment, and forgetting about the big picture that is the end-to-end customer service. If you look at things just with a very siloed approach, this is where things starts to hurt and to be disconnected, and the risk is about, putting pieces of technologies that actually are just forming new silos, and that hurts, not just at customer service, it hurts everywhere. So I do think that, and we've been saying that for a long time at Forrester, that this being customer obsessed is really about understanding how technology is changing us, and the brands that can be leaders need to understand how this is changing us and adapt the way they're doing business to match rising expectations from customers. You want the same experience with a customer service agent that you do have on your brand new phone with the brand new app that you're using. You want that same feel, and so do the agents actually, and the ones that are really engaged and mobilized to serve and help customers. They also want to have tools that can help them do their job and see that they can make progress without having to put too much effort in there. So everything that is about connecting those two humans behind the interface, on one side the customer and on the other side the agent, is going to bring brands deliver better experience. And sometimes it's about a piece of technology, sometimes it's just about a basic journey mapping understanding, so you have that big picture in mind.
Yeah, I agree, and I think one of the things that we're seeing more and more is that by applying this technology and having a much better understanding of why somebody's contacting your organisation, we can actually start to go back to having much more specialists within a contact centre. So for the last decade or so, we've seen this idea about creating almost like a universal soldier that can handle pretty much any contact that comes in. But as AI filters off some of those low value contacts and enables us to understand exactly why the customer's calling and pinpoint that to the person with the right level of expertise, we can go back to having these real deep pockets of expertise within a contact centre. And I guess Marks and Spencer's is probably a great example of someone actually doing that. So thank you very much. So I think we've probably running short on time now. So I just want to thank the panellists for joining, and I'm going to hand over to Mike now just to close things up. Thank you, Mike.
Fantastic. Thanks ever so much to all of our panellists. Thanks to Tom and Stu. I'm sure you'll agree that was some really interesting insights, some great conversation, and possibly our audience are thinking, okay, this is great, you've stimulated some interesting ideas, but how can I take this forward? How do we continue the conversation, and what can we do next? And I would like to offer 3 ways in which we can do that with you. So the first option is that we're delighted to offer you the chance to see a live personal demonstration online, clearly, of some of the technologies that have been discussed during the course of the event today. Please go to the webpage URL, which is live at the moment. You can do it right here, right now. Tick the appropriate box or boxes. Register your interest in one of these topics, and one of my team will call you back directly and schedule a mutually convenient time for a 30-minute demo online. So there are 6 options that we're delighted to offer the audience. So first of all, we have option number 1 is focused around voice automation. So if you're particularly interested in the type of solution that the team was describing around Marks and Spencer's, that's a perfect example of this. Number 2 is digital automation. So if you were interested in perhaps some of the capabilities that Adrian was talking about in providing a digital chatbot and starting to automate a lot of the contact that's being handled there, then that's a great opportunity to see Sabio's virtual assistant. Option number 3 is focused around migration to the cloud. So if you want to migrate to the cloud, and you want to benefit from all of the value of doing that, and you want to leverage some of the great omni-channel capabilities that are available through the Sabio on-demand platform, the team would love to demonstrate that to you. And as mentioned before, we've had a large number of our customer base adopting and benefiting from that solution. If you are maybe a digital native, or if you're a little bit more disruptive and you are interested in maybe a bit more the building end of the spectrum rather than necessarily an off-the-shelf end of the spectrum, then you might be really interested in a programmable contact center offering. And this is option number 4. So if you're really interested in understanding more about Twilio Flex and seeing how that can work and maybe augment an existing platform, or you want to experiment with that, that's a great opportunity for you to see that. So maybe coming back to some of the points that Corinne was talking about earlier on, and really understanding voice of the customer and empowering agents and listening to agents and really understanding what your customers are telling you. Option number 5 will give you the opportunity to see that Sabio's voice of the customer platform, and to see a tool and a capability with a really strong analytics package that will help you understand the voice of the customer a little bit more. And finally, in order to leverage our human-to-human connection, it's vital that we make the most and optimize our people deployment within our customer experience environments. So number 6 is the final option, and that is all focused around Sabio's ability to provide you with workforce management, consultancy, guidance, and best practice. So those are 6 options and 6 easy ways in which we could continue the conversation with you, if that's of interest. So the second option that we're delighted to make available to you is Tom has offered to host a webinar to talk a little bit more about Develop's capability, to share some of the secrets of Develop, their approach, their solutions, and maybe a little bit more detail in around Marks and Spencer's story. And we will host that on the 7th of April. And again, on that same webpage, you'll be able to register an interest in that, and we will include you within that webinar session also. And the third option is really one of our offer and help of support. So Stu's mentioned earlier on, we're acutely aware that these are not normal circumstances that we're bringing this event to you today. The global pandemic is having a significant impact on our lives and our businesses. As Stu said last week, Sabio took the decision to implement a 100% remote working strategy. And we know that you are all focusing on how to best manage your business and your customers as well. We're all in this together, and at this time, we have to really focus on what's most important, and that's people. It's our families, it's our colleagues and their families, it's our customers, our partners, our competitors and their families as well. And so we at Sabio are very keen to be able to provide support for you in that environment. There are countless offers of assistance from tech companies. I got lots of these in my inbox. I'm sure that you have as well. At Sabio, we've really reflected on how we could best perhaps offer some assistance. And we're technology experts. We've got some great partners, but without doubt, our greatest asset is this amazing community of customers and peers and our skilled employees. And so we would like to offer you the opportunity to engage among yourselves and share ideas and approaches in how you're employing and managing this situation right now. So our offer to you is facilitating these discussions among the peer groups and among this environment. If you would like to take advantage of that, if you think that that would be of value to you right now, please email us at info@sabiogroup.com. In the subject heading, just use peer group as a subject or something like that. We're keen to hear from you how we can best help you, and we will we will prioritise mobilising whatever kind of forum and engagement we can in order to support you at this time. So that pretty much brings us to a conclusion of the event today. It's been a fantastic event, loads of great content and insights from our presenters. We started with Stu, who took us back around about 4 decades and really showed us how far we've come and started to make us think about what will the 20s mean for us and what does the current decade mean. He talked about the acceleration of AI, the increasing importance of contact centres, and you know, the dematerialisation of so many products changing how we influence today. Then we listened to Karine. Thank you so much, Karine, for your contribution. You reminded us the importance of that human-to-human service, and I think really, you know, how important it is to empower our employees to go that extra mile and deliver that great service to our customers. A really insightful session. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mike. I'd also just like to say thank you to our panel, to all of the guys that have dialed in remotely. We know that our Disrupt event has been disrupted significantly, and it's made us all have to, you know, manage this in ways that we didn't quite think of even a few weeks ago. So thank you very much for joining us. Tony joining us from the States, Adrian, Karine and John, really appreciate you joining us, and hopefully you can join us again to participate as we run the physical version of this event, hopefully at some point later this year. Tom?
I think more than anything else, I'd really like to say thank you for kind of having me as part of the Sabio team. I'm really hugely excited to be working with you all and the technologies and the platform partners to be able to bring some of those stories to our customers and to be able to help take them on that journey, which we hope will be revolutionary as opposed to evolutionary. Clearly, I would like to thank Craig, the marketing team, and the production crew who have gone to unbelievable efforts in very difficult circumstances to bring all of this together. And I'd particularly like to thank Tony and John from Twilio and Google, I guess really personally, for all of the support that you provided over the last few years to help our journey to here today. And we're all extremely excited to be working with you going forwards, both on a kind of personal and professional basis, but also with the technology that you guys bring. So very, very excited.
Thank you, Tom. And my last comments really are to thank our sponsors. So as Stuart said, we will be running the full live in-person event in the autumn. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Avaya, Verint, Gamma and Semaphone, for the great technologies that they've provided to us and enabled us to provide to our clients, and the ongoing support that they give us in putting these events together. They will be with us in person in the autumn when we run the final event. And finally, thank you to all of you for investing your time in being with us today. And we know these are difficult times, and Sabio is here to help you in any practical way that we can. So I'd like to wish you a good afternoon. Please keep safe, and we look forward to seeing you again in person very soon. Thank you.